he spoke at my campus 3-4 years ago. And at the time, I was walking with a cane. I've since gotten better. I get around a lot better than I did then. But after his speech, I kind of hobbled up there to meet the guy. I mean, I'd read his work, and I stuck out my hand, Oseo, howdy, Cherokee. And when I spoke to him, he looked like I'd said something horrible, and he just turned around and literally ran off the other way, and I couldn't follow him because I couldn't move very fast at the time. I kind of thought it was because he was surrounded by young ladies and he'd rather hang out with them than an old fart like me, but I've since learned that speaking to him in Cherokee was not the way to get to talk to Ward Churchill. This brings me to the Andrea Smith problem, which I'm going to talk about rather more here than I talk about in my paper, for reasons I'll explain. Excuse me. And I'd also like to give Andrea Smith credit for the title of this paper in a way. I didn't title this paper for shock value. I intend it as a serious contribution to the emerging philosophical field of bullshit studies, and perhaps the first major contribution to applied bullshit studies. Now, the essence of bullshit differs greatly from lying, and that's why I use the word. I'm not trying to shock anybody. It's important to understand the distinction and why I use it in this case. I would refer you to Harry Frankfurt's seminal essay on bullshit, which is the basic work of bullshit studies. And should I read this or should I just explain? I'll just explain it. If you are going to lie, you are fundamentally tethered to truth. You have to be, because in order to lie, you have to know where the truth is, and you have to insert your lie among the truths in a way that makes sense to the rest of the world. So a liar is basically interested in the truth, although not interested in the same way most of us are. A bullshitter, on the other hand, doesn't really care about the context because they have no regard for the truth whatsoever. And when challenged, a bullshitter has the same response at all times, and that is pilot higher and deeper. And it gets really complicated. And this brings me to Andrea Smith. I was at a conference here at MSU, a literary conference, Wordcraft Circle. And there was a petition being circulated protesting Andrea Smith's denial of tenure by University of Michigan. And I spoke with my colleagues who were circulating the petition, and I took a look at some of her work, and I signed the petition. And I didn't have any problem doing that. She looked to me like she was at least as qualified to be tenured as I was, and I'd been tenured twice. So I signed it. And later on, I wrote an article in Indian Country Today supporting her tenure bid. And as a result of that, I got 2 waves of email. One wave, mostly from women, saying, oh, thank you for recognizing her work. I cannot tell you how much it means to me. She really should be tenured. And then this was pretty much the same kind of things I'd heard from my colleagues. The other avalanche of email was, she's not Indian. And of course, my response to that was, I didn't say she was Indian. I never did. I mean, if you look back in that first column I wrote, I didn't say anything about her being Indian. I said she heads the Indian Studies program. I said that she's written 2 books and a bunch of articles, and they're really significant in the field, and she probably deserves to be tenured by objective standards. Well, this did not satisfy folks, so I contacted my tribal wannabe police. That would be Richard Allen, PhD, who works for the Cherokee Nation. And he had had a bunch of contact with Andrea Smith, and he kind of laid out to me how it had gone. Meantime, I get an email from Andrea Smith, and she wants to call me. And I email her back, and I say, I don't want you to call me, and I tell her exactly why. This has gotten too controversial. There are too many people interested in it, and I do want to talk to you, but I want to talk to you by email, because email creates a record. Whereas if we have a telephone conversation, either one of us could say anything. Well, she emailed me twice more, asking for permission to call. I said no both times. Finally, she called me anyway. And then we had this bizarre conversation, and the thing that really ran me off the rails was when she said, well, she thought she was enrolled. Well, come on. I mean, my dad was enrolled. I was born in Oklahoma, had at that time a recognizably Indian name, small town, everybody knew me. But I knew I wasn't enrolled. I mean, I knew I had to go over to the tribal offices and jump through some hoops before I could, for example, vote in tribal elections, things like that. Now, I know that the Eastern Band of Cherokees does not enroll adults. So if you wish to enroll, you have to enroll while you're a kid. But presumably, your parents would not enroll you and then let it slip their mind and not tell you you're enrolled. But this is what's really weird. She didn't know who her alleged Cherokee ancestor was, but still, not knowing who her alleged ancestor was, she thought she was enrolled. Well, Richard had told me that he had done the genealogy and she was neither enrolled nor descended. We don't have any problem with descendants as long as they say they're descendants. And he thought he had an understanding with her that she would quit representing as being Cherokee. So I brought this up, and she said, well, yes, that was pretty much the way it went, and I asked her, would she send me an email setting this out? And she did, which makes me very happy, because it enabled me to write a subsequent column about how she's not Cherokee and she's not Indian, she's not descended, she's not enrolled, she's just not Indian. And I used the term ethnic fraud, but I didn't use it directly towards her, because I kind of felt sorry for her, and I've tried to pretty much leave her alone since then. I felt about as emotional, by the end of that conversation, I felt about as emotionally involved as you can get with somebody over the telephone. I mean, I really, really felt sorry for her. Well, then a couple of weeks ago, I got an email from a colleague of mine, a fellow that I had sat on a panel with at an Indian conference, and he was jumping all over me for what I'd written in Indian Country Today, and he said he thought I owed a public apology to Andrea Smith. And instead of going off half-cocked, because I knew the guy, I sent him a big long reply explaining the stuff that I just explained to you.